Yeah.
Es brennt, brüderlich, es brennt, wie unser Ohrenstädtel nämlich brennt. Bitte Winden mit ihr Gossen, reißen, brechen und zu bloßen, starke noch die wilde Flammen, auf der Rome scheine Brand. Und steht und koche sei sich mit verlegter Hand. Und steht und koche sei sich und der Schädel brennt. It burns, brother, it burns. Our poor Städtel pitifully burns. Angry wind with rage and curses, tears and shatters and disperses. Wild flames leap, they twist and turn. Everything now burns. And you stand there looking on hands, folded palms upturned. And you stand there looking on while our shuttle burns.
Kan b'mishloach hazeh, ani chava, im hevel b'ni, im tiru et b'ni hagadol, Kayin ben Adam, tagidu lo, she'ani. Here in this carload, I, Eve, with my son Abel. If you see my older boy Cain, the son of Adam, tell him that Don Pagis's poem, written in pencil in the sealed freight car, featured on the cover of tonight's liturgy, has always haunted me. How did it end? What did Eve mean to tell her son? Could she have stopped her eldest son's mad rampage? Don Pagis does not tell us. Eve's voice is cut off midstream, like those of the 6 million. 6 million voices cut off before their time. 6 million souls who might have repaired this world, never to share their talents, their passions, their knowledge, their passion for justice, their poetry. Pagis's 19 words evoke the history of human violence, personified by the mother of the first murderer and the first murder victim. They evoke the anguish of parents forced to watch their children die. They point to the human need to leave testimony. And as the number of survivors dwindles, we will have to rely on the stories told to the second and third generations, as we will hear tonight. Emil Fackenheim, a survivor and Jewish theologian who came to Canada in 1940, wrote what he called the 614th commandment. We are forbidden to give Hitler a posthumous victory. By this he meant that we Jews are forbidden to destroy ourselves through assimilation and indifference. But I think he also meant this to be a commandment for all the world. Never to let any despot or tyrant succeed in destroying a people. We must never again stand by the blood of our neighbors. On this Yom HaShoah, let us commit ourselves to speak out, to fight injustice, and to dedicate ourselves to the rescue of all humankind. Page 2. In the presence of eyes which witnessed the slaughter, which saw the oppression the heart could not bear, and as witnessed the heart that once taught compassion until the days came to pass that crushed human feeling, I have taken an oath to remember it all, to remember, not once to forget. Forget not one thing to the last generation, when degradation shall cease, to the last, to its ending, when the rod of instruction shall have come to conclusion. An oath, not in vain passed over the night of the terror. An oath, no morning shall see me at flesh pots again. An oath, lest from this we learned nothing.
The song was written for Aaron Zeitlin's play Erstige, produced by Morris Schwartzes in 1940 to 41, and printed in the program. It became one of the most widely sung Yiddish songs and was performed in Yiddish and English translation by Theodor Bickel, Joan Myers, and others. Translations have also appeared in German and Korean. On a wagon about your market, there's a calf with a mournful heart. High above him there's a swallow swinging swiftly through the sky. How the winds are laughing, they laugh with all their might. Laugh and laugh the whole day through, and half the summer's night. Donna, 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 donna. Donna, 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 donna. Donna, 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 donna. Donna, 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 donna. Stop complaining, said the farmer. Who told you a calf to be? Why don't you have wings to fly with, like the swallow so proud and free? How the winds are laughing, they laugh with all their might. Laugh and laugh the whole day through, and half the summer's night. Donna, 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 donna. Donna, 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 donna. Donna, 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 donna. Donna, 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 donna. Calves are easily bound and slaughtered, never knowing the reason why. But whoever treasures freedom, like a swallow must learn to fly. How the winds are laughing, they laugh with all their might. Laugh and laugh the whole day through, and half the summer's night. Donna, 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 donna. Donna, 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 donna. Donna, 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 donna. Donna, 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 donna.
Never Shall I Forget by Elie Wiesel. Never shall I forget that night, the first night in the camp, which has turned my life into one long night, 7 times cursed and 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget that smoke. Never shall I forget the little faces of the children whose bodies I saw turned into wreaths of smoke beneath a silent blue sky. Never shall I forget those flames which consumed my faith forever. Never shall I forget that nocturnal silence which deprived me for all eternity of the desire to live. Never shall I forget those moments which murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to dust. Never shall I forget these things, even if I am condemned to live as long as God himself.
A Song of the Vilna Ghetto by Shmerka Kazerginsky. Written after the death of his wife in April 1943, it was first sung in the theater review of Die Jungische in Fass, and later it was sung in the other ghettos and concentration camps. Kazerginsky joined the partisan forces following the liquidation of the ghetto in September 1943. Music is by Abraham Brudno, who, following the liquidation of the ghetto, was deported to a German concentration camp in Estonia, where he died. vessel und Könige finna kein Ort. Du ist mein Leber betroffen in der Rippe, Menschen solcher Wort. Es läuft auf mein Heimat, der Himmel, der Bläue, wo ich auch sich davon. Ich steh wie ein Bettler bei jedem Winter und bettel ein bisschen Sonne. Frühling, nimm zu mein Treuer und bringt meine Liebsten, mein Treuer zurück. Like a boy, and name my heart's need, one gabby mein Blick. Frühling, we've deine Fliege Bläue, und name my heart's need, und gib es auf mein Anblick. The ghetto from alley to alley, useless no haven I find. God, my beloved, oh how can I bear it? I won't someone say something kind. My house is aglow now, the sky so much bluer. What does that mean in my life? I stand like a beggar, I huddle in gateways and beg for a handful of light. Springtime, dispel my sorrow, bring my beloved, my dear one to me. For me, oh borrow, oh take my poor heart and return my joy to me. Springtime, oh take my sorrow and take my poor heart and return my joy to me. Nachamu, nachamu, ami omar aleichem, daberu alev Yerushalayim, vekiru aleha, ki mala'a tzva'a, ki nirtza avona, ki lakecha biyad Adonai, ki falayim bechol hatoteha. Kol korei pad mi bar padu derech Adonai yarishu baraba mi seila lelohinu.
Page 6.
Comfort my people, comfort them, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem. Say to her that she has served her term, that her sin is pardoned, for she has received the hand of the Eternal, more than enough punishment for her sins. A voice calls, prepare a road for the Eternal through the wilderness, cleared a highway in the desert for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, every mountain and hill made low. The uneven ground shall be made level, the rough places a plain. The Eternal's presence shall be revealed, and united all shall see it, for the Eternal One has spoken. A voice rings out, announce, author asks. Another asks, what shall I announce? All flesh is grass, and all its grace like a flower in the field. Grass withers and flowers fade when God's breath blows on them. Yes, the people are grass. Grass withers and flowers fade, but our God's whole word holds good forever. Ascend a high mountain, O herald of good tidings to Zion. Raise your voice with power, O herald of good things, of tidings to Jerusalem. Speak up without fear. Say to the cities of Judah, behold your God. Behold the eternal God coming in night, coming to rule with outstretched arm, bringing divine reward and recompense from on high. Like a shepherd tending a flock, gathering the lambs in his arms, carrying them, and gently leading the ewes. Anim, amin, anim, amin, anim, amin, anim, amin. Namona shlema, namona shlema. Beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach, ani mamin. Beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach, ani mamin. Ani mamin, ani mamin, ani mamin.
From Anne Frank's diary dated July 15th, 1944. It's really a wonder that I haven't dropped all my ideals, because they seem so absurd and impossible to carry out. Yet, I keep them, because in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. I simply can't build up my hopes on a foundation consisting of confusion, misery, and death. I can see the world gradually being turned into a wilderness. I hear the ever-approaching thunder, which will destroy us too. I can feel the sufferings of millions, and yet, if I look at the heavens, I think that it will all come out right, that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. In the meantime, I must uphold my ideals, for perhaps the time will come when I shall be able to carry them out.
Ever since Temple Har Zion celebrated its 40th anniversary, the traditions at our Yom HaShoah service has been to have current B'nai Mitzvah students represent the 11 children from the Mishlech who likely died before becoming a bar or bat mitzvah. My name is Fallon Hodgin, and I became a bat mitzvah on March 5th. I was the first of 11 students that will become bar or bat mitzvah in 2022. In this evening service, the 11 other B'nai Mitzvah students will be honoring the 11 children from Mishleh, acknowledging the opportunity they will soon have to mark a Jewish life cycle milestone in becoming a bar or bat mitzvah. We will continue remembering each of these names, knowing they were not allowed the same opportunity and privileges that we have been offered. As a young Jewish adult, we have chosen to continue our education, ensuring the continuation of Jewish life and learning. We all remember the 11 children that were not as fortunate as us, as we feel part of and welcomed by our THZ community. Our first Mishleh child we will be remembering is Ingeborg Hermanova, who was born February 5th, 1929. Sadly, she died not becoming a bar mitzvah like me, as she died in Terezin.
My name is Emma Tepper. Tonight, I am representing Hannah Blochova from the town of Mikle. She was born to a family from the former synagogue in Czechoslovakia that Temple Har Zion adopted in connection with their Holocaust Torah. Hannah was born on April 11, 1940. She was arrested and placed on a transport on December 14, 1941, to be shipped to a concentration camp. She died on the way. I will have Hannah in my heart on September 10th when I become bat mitzvah.
My name is Juliana Castiglione, and I will become a bat mitzvah on November 5th. I will be thinking of Elena Hermanova at that time. She was born on November 3rd, 1934. We do not know exactly when to or where Elena was deported, but we know that she was arrested and placed on a transport and died. I will remember Elena as I continue to prepare and become a bat mitzvah.
My name is Alyssa Keys, and I will be celebrating becoming bat mitzvah on September 3rd. I will be thinking of Lothar Brod, who was born April 4th, 1935. Lothar was arrested and placed on a transport and sent to a concentration camp. The details are not known, but we know that he died and never became bar mitzvah. I remember Lothar as I had the wonderful opportunity to celebrate becoming bar mitzvah. I would also like to acknowledge my great-grandmother, Lara Wallner, who survived the Holocaust and is an inspiration for me today.
Hi, my name is Shana Gaborio. My bat mitzvah will be on June 18th. I'm representing Otto Reiner, who was born on June 19, 1926. We do not know exactly when or to where Otto was deported, but we know that he was arrested and placed on a transport and died. I will remember Otto as I have the privilege to become a bat mitzvah.
Hello, my name is Samuel Gilbert, and my bar mitzvah will be on September 17th. I'll be thinking of Harry Kovanets, who was born on October 16, 1927. Because of what was happening in Czechoslovakia at the time, he was unable to have a bar mitzvah. When I chant Torah, I'm going to remember Harry, who never had that opportunity. Today, I also remember the hundreds of family members of my great-grandparents who perished in the Holocaust.
My name is Hillary Green, and I'm currently preparing for my bat mitzvah on October 8th. I'm representing Jan Brott, who was born October 17th, 1941. He was arrested and placed on a transport and died. I will remember Jan as I have the opportunity to celebrate my bat mitzvah with my friends and family here at Temple Har Zion. On behalf of Avery Menashe, who cannot be here tonight, I will speak about Rolf Kaufman, who he will represent at his bar mitzvah on May 7th. Rolf Kaufman was born on May 17, 1938. He was arrested, deported, and died before becoming bar mitzvah. Avery will remember Rolf during his bar mitzvah as he celebrates with his friends and family.
My name is DJ Miguel. I will become bat mitzvah on May 28th. I will be thinking about Klaus Hermann, who was born May 27th, 1931. We do not know exactly when, but Klaus was arrested and placed on a transport and did not become bar mitzvah before he died. I will be thinking of Klaus the morning of my bat mitzvah.
My name is Zachary Hersky, and I will become bar mitzvah on January 14th of next year. I am representing Zegmud Schembach, who was born on January 28, 1925. Zegmud was transported February 8, 1942, and died. I will remember him on the morning of my bar mitzvah.
My name is Eric Hersky. I am preparing for my bar mitzvah here at Temple Hart Zion on January 14th of next year. Rudolf Hermann, who was born on January 23, 1927, did not have the opportunity to become bar mitzvah. He was arrested and transported to a camp and died. I will be thinking about Rudolf as I chant from the Torah.
First they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the communists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me.
A song of the Vilna ghetto, an 11-year-old boy named Alex Volkovitsky wrote this prize-winning melody in a ghetto contest. Shmerka Kazarginsky then set words to the tune. Volkovitsky and his mother were sent to a concentration camp. They were two of the few Vilna Jews to survive the war. After liberation, Volkovitsky moved to Israel, where he became a professional pianist working under the name Tamir. He died in 2019. Stille, stille, lo mir schweigen, Quoren wachsen da. Tomen sie verglanzt, die Sonne im Grinnen sie zum Blau. Es werden Wegen zu, Panor zu, es wird kein Glück zurück. Ist der wohl verschwunden und mit ihm das Glück. Stiller, mein Wehen nicht äußerst schwer, nicht kein Gewinn. Unlich wenn so nimmer sei, wie nicht verstehen. So bin der Brücke sei die Jomen, so bin wies es euch Damen. Nur zu unser Pein, kein bisschen Pein, kein bisschen Schein. Quiet, quiet, let's be silent, dead are growing here. They were planted by the tyrant, see their bloom appear. All the roads lead back to Morno, there are no roads back. And our father too has vanished, and with him our luck. Still, my child, don't cry, my jewel, tears no help command. Our pain callous people never understand. Seas and oceans have their order, prison also has its border. But to our plight there is no light, there is no light.
We wandered in the dryness while our children begged for water, and death was all around us. Yet were you there in the desert. Reveal your plan, O Eternal. Let us be your confidants, that we may soothe our children with confidence of your care. In the barricaded barn, hidden in straw, our children wept silently as death rode into the goose yard. Yet were you there in the village. Speak again of the covenant that saved Isaac from the knife, that broke through brambled thorns as Abraham became your partner in life. Even the taste of ashes, of smoke and destruction, of remembrance that defies forgetting, even there, you were with us. We untangle the plan from our memories and hold it threadbare and knotted, soiled, defiled, yet surviving, reborn, released from agony. You are there, O Eternal. You are there as we remember. Your hand beckons us closer. Your voice whispers, do not forget.
I first learned about the Shoah in grade 9 at Temple Har Zion Religious School. Julian Kraft was our teacher, and I have a vivid memory of watching some black and white movie clips with images that were different than anything I had seen before. I remember how I couldn't get my head around all of it. What? How? Why? I had so many questions. Throughout my life, I have endeavored to answer those questions. Put simply, when my family sees me reading a book that is not about the Holocaust, they are surprised. Many years later, and I have concluded that Elaine Birnbaum was one of my greatest teachers of the Shoah. It was very personal to and for her. As a child of two survivors, dedicating herself to educating others about the atrocities committed played a huge role in her life. She and her brother Neil shared the following with us from this bima in 2019. Here's the thing about playing the Holocaust card. For us, and many like us, children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, the Holocaust is not a card. It is the hand we were dealt. And Holocaust remembrance is not a day. It is a lifetime. A few years into my 20-year role here, it became a priority for me to create an increasingly meaningful commemorative Shoah experience. Elaine and I ultimately became a team. Around Purim time every year, I would head over to her Green Leaves and Petals office, and we would begin the process of sharing with one another the readings and stories that we each had compiled throughout the past year. We would look back on the previous year's services and begin to shape the upcoming one, including focusing on ways to make it ever more personal. We would also talk about who we might engage to speak. Well, the nature of the commemoration changed over time. One main goal for both of us was involving as many participants as possible, including survivors, their children, and their grandchildren, people whose lives had been directly impacted by the Shoah. Sometimes it was only while officiating at funerals that I would discover that a congregant's parent had been a survivor, asking them, as well as that year's pre-B'nai Mitzvah class, to participate in the annual commemoration was providing them, I believe, an opportunity to perform what Rabbi Weiss referred to before, Dr. Emil Fackenheim's 614th commandment, not to grant Hitler a posthumous victory. After our first meeting, Elaine and I would communicate back and forth a bit, but she also entrusted the ultimate compilation, organization, and preparation to me. One of my last rituals would be to buy 6 yahrzeit candles, and when the evening came, Elaine and her family would arrive, and she would always bring 6 yellow tulips to place behind each candle. After her mother passed away, together with her father, Mickey Zworth, Elaine created the Ann Zworth Holocaust Education Fund here at Temple Har Zion. Throughout the years, it has provided funds towards educating congregants and the general public about all aspects of the Shoah through the funding of speakers and events, including the annual Temple Har Zion Holocaust Education Week event in November, as well as sponsoring students to go on the March of the Living program. Numerous Temple Har Zion High School students have benefited from the fund, all having transformative experiences on the march. In the year following, I would reach out to those young people and ask them to share photos and stories from those experiences with all of us. After Temple Har Zion's Yom HaShoah observance in 2014, Elaine wrote me a long email expressing her thoughts and feelings. These are some of her words. The weeks and days leading up to this very time of year are quite emotional and difficult for me and have been for a very long time. When my mother was alive, year after year at this time, in late winter, early spring, she spoke of her experiences. It was on April 14th that she was liberated from Bergen-Belsen after being a prisoner in Auschwitz-Birkenau. We sent her flowers every year as it was her 2nd birthday. She spoke of her horrors and experiences more so at this time of year. After Corey, their son, returned from the march in April of '96, life changed for all of us. Her dedication to making sure others, especially young people, knew of the horrors, completely heightened. She began a quest to do whatever she could to be heard and encourage those who were survivors to do the same. Celia, my mother-in-law, never wanted to speak about it. My mother changed all of that in her. Together they spoke and were able to engage others. I have to believe that somewhere, somehow, they are together, beaming with pride. When I close my tear-filled eyes, I can see them smiling. I write these words to you, Tara, and with my heart, I thank you for wanting to make this time in history etched in the minds of people, in the community, their families, and our temple members. Elaine took that 614th commandment very seriously, and it was my honor and privilege to both work with and learn from such a special person who was beautiful inside and out. For quite some time now, we've all acknowledged the obvious. Soon the remaining survivors will no longer be alive. How do we continue to share their stories and make sure that they don't die with them? How do we continue to make the Shoah a priority in education? We are commanded to keep talking about the Holocaust. Elaine's husband, Eddie, told me that before we lost her too soon this past December, their son, Corey, had promised his mother that he would continue her legacy of Holocaust education, and he's here tonight making good on his promise. As always, tonight's commemoration is dedicated to those who perished in the Shoah as well as those who survived. However, this year we also dedicate this evening to the memory of our beloved Elaine Birnbaum. Zichrona livracha. May her memory always be a blessing, and may we be inspired to continue her legacy of telling the stories and sharing the truths, no matter how painful. People of all ages must learn about the Shoah, and when they do, they need to keep asking these questions. What? How? Why?
I remember sitting at the Shabbat table growing up and listening to my Bobby Ann share stories about her experiences in the Holocaust. I remember having Holocaust survivors visit my elementary school and high school to share their stories. I remember going on the March of the Living and having the privilege of having Holocaust survivors as chaperones on the trip. I remember visiting Auschwitz-Birkenau and having the opportunity to call my grandparents immediately after to just gather questions and reflect with them. Well, the second generation, or the children of the Holocaust survivors, grew up in homes with survivors of the Holocaust, often witnessing the trauma, stress, and impact that the Holocaust had firsthand. The grandchildren have been widely viewed as the generation to carry the oral tradition and keep the stories of the Holocaust alive. My mother, Elaine Birnbaum, was an advocate for Holocaust education, and along with my father, provided me with opportunities to engage with survivors, participate in educational programs, and learn about this horrific time in recent history. They instilled in me my responsibility to respond to injustice, keep these firsthand accounts in my mind as we move forward in our attempts to create an inclusive and accepting society, and ultimately prevent anything like the Holocaust from ever happening again. I recall a journal entry that I wrote when I was on the March of the Living in 1996. It was the same day that I visited Block 25 in Auschwitz-Birkenau, the block that my Bobby Ann was assigned to. Prior to my departure, we had many conversations, and during these conversations, she described to me the block, the crematorium next door, the view of the smokestacks from the window near her bunk, the wall she would stand in front of every morning during roll call. It was not lost on me at the time that I had the ability to reflect with her firsthand, and I knew that I had a responsibility. In this journal entry detailing this experience, it was the very first time that I referred to myself as a teacher, an educator with a responsibility to not only share stories and experiences, but one who also needs to create the conditions, experiences, and opportunities for future generations to understand the horrors of the Shoah. As an educator today, I often reflect on this revelation, and back when I was in grade 10, I recognize that my children and the children of the fourth generation will have limited, if any, contact with Holocaust survivors in their learning journey. As an elementary school principal now, I am committed to my responsibility to create these conditions for children to engage in opportunities to learn about the Shoah, and yes, this is essential learning in schools. It is equally important for us to teach children to be critical thinkers. We live in a time where access to information is abundant and instantaneous. The problem is the credibility and truth behind this information. Having had the opportunity to hear firsthand accounts from survivors, I never had to question the source or the validity. My generation could just dedicate ourselves to simply trying to internalize the information and make sense of it all. We need to recognize that this teaching and learning model needs to change now. With limited access to firsthand accounts, we need to rely on the stories that have been passed down through generations and help the children of the fourth generation and beyond become critical thinkers who seek out credible partnerships, resources, and opportunities to engage in authentic learning about the Holocaust. About a month ago, my children, Ariel and Shale, became B'nai Mitzvah. During their Dvar Torah, they both made a connection that really resonates with me. When relating to the concept of Lashon Hara, meaning gossip or slander, they both recognize that through the web or social media, there's a lot of misinformation out there. They also made reference to Holocaust denial and that the moral and ethical responsibility to learn, inform others, and critically examine our sources. In both the Toronto District School Board and York Region District School Board, I have worked alongside some very passionate colleagues who are actively committed to ensuring that the right resources make their way into classrooms. We have also engaged in partnerships with organizations like the Simon Wiesenthal Center, Yad Vashem, and the Shoah Foundation. In fact, just yesterday, students across the district were able to visit Yad Vashem virtually. And today, they participated in sessions focused on resistance movements during the Holocaust. Although access to first-hand accounts may seem limited, we now have archives of over 3,000 credible accounts through the Shoah Foundation, and we need to make sure that the fourth generation engages with these documented accounts and learns how and where to access accurate information. By virtual means, we now have the ability to travel to museums, memorials, and sites in ways that we could have never done before. Similarly, access to stories are available if we just dedicate our time and our efforts to listening. I remember standing behind the camera, watching with amazement as my Bobby Ann courageously shared her account for the Shoah Foundation. I remember overhearing a conversation between my Bobby Ann and my Bobby Celia about the importance of sharing their stories. I remember my Papa Mickey standing right here in this very spot on Yom HaShoah, introducing himself as a Holocaust survivor. This generation of youth will no longer have the ability to have survivors speak at schools or hear firsthand the accounts at Shabbat dinner tables, or even a Holocaust survivor available to chaperone a trip, respond to questions, reflect with, or even fact check something that they see online. So it's incumbent upon all of us to not only teach the right tools and resources, but also empower this generation to recognize and fulfill their obligation to pass on the stories to future generations as well as to others, and respond to injustice as soon as they notice it.
I'm not supposed to be here today. Had the Nazis succeeded in their plan to eliminate European Jewry, and World War II had gone on much longer, my parents wouldn't have survived. Even though it's 77 years since the end of World War II, the global Jewish population has still not returned to its pre-war level. 6 million people are not easily replaced. Many times I've asked myself, what if my mother hadn't been strong enough to make it through that typhus epidemic that wiped out half of the Shagorod ghetto in Transnistria in the winter of 1941-42? What if my father hadn't been tipped off that guards were about to kill another group of Sonderkommandos at Gross Rosen in January 1945? Luck, resilience, and a passion to live is why I'm here today. I came here to tell my parents' stories. That is in itself a challenge because my parents weren't able to fully share what they went through. There were too many painful memories that they buried. There were family members who I never knew existed. While researching for a book that I'm working on, I've been able to piece together with some details their experiences. In doing so, I was also able to come to grips with my own trauma. The most important thing I learned on this journey was my life is a gift, something that can't be wasted. My father, Elia Oxenhandler, was born in a Polish village of Wazlika in 1912. He was the fourth of 6 children. The Oxenhandler family lived in Wazlika for over 150 years. Then in 1930, because of the Great Depression, they were forced to relocate to Benzin in Upper Silesia, where there were better opportunities. In his early 20s, my father opened up a butcher shop in the old Jewish market in town. His way of life was shattered when German troops marched into Benzin on September 4th, 1939. Within days, the great synagogue was firebombed and turned into rubble. Jewish property and businesses were confiscated, and the Jews were placed under a curfew. In the spring of 1940, he was sent to the first of 7 different forced labor and death camps where he worked 12-hour days for no pay under the harshest conditions in factories owned by wealthy German industrialists. This was part of the Schmelt organization, which was an initiative developed by Heinrich Himmler to exploit Polish Jews. It was my father's productivity and work ethics that saved him from the final solution. Even when it was understood that the war was lost in late 1944, killing Jewish prisoners was still a priority. As the camps were being abandoned, with Allied armies advancing, prisoners were taken on death marches because no one was to be spared. Just weeks or even days before these death marches, my father was relocated to other camps because he was still considered useful to the Germans. In the last 4 months of the war, he was in 4 different camps. He walked out of Bissingen concentration camp in April 1945, just a bag of bones. My mother, Shifra Zlodjever, was the youngest of 8 children. Her grandfather actually moved from Bukovina region of Romania, from Galicia in the 1800s, because there were better opportunities for Jews. She was a teenager when the war broke out in Romania. On August 2nd, 1940, the war reached the village of Kamenesti where she lived. A pogrom was carried out by Romanian soldiers who destroyed her family home as well as the homes of the other 20 Jewish families in the village. They were homeless and survived on the charity of Jews from the nearby town of Suceava. My mother's family was split up because no one was able to accommodate them all. In October 1941, all the Jews of Bukovina were expelled from Romania. My mother, along with 2 siblings and her mother, were dumped in Transnistria, which is a tract of land in Ukraine between the Dnistria and Bug rivers. Tens of thousands of Romanian Jews were forced to survive in what turned out to be a killing field with no food, shelter, or warm clothes. They sold whatever they could get their hands on for food and even stole feed from pigsties to survive. In 1944, the survivors were freed by the Russian army. No one had homes to return to, and many Romanian Jews made their way to Palestine, including my mother and 2 siblings. My father arrived in Israel after independence. They met, got married, and eventually came to Canada to begin life all over again. I'm here to remember the family members who also didn't survive. My uncle Yitzhak Sludgever, who didn't even make it to Transnistria because he was cruelly drowned in the Dnistria River by Romanian soldiers en route to Ukraine. My grandfather, Wolf Sludgever, he died because of beatings from Romanian fascists in September of 1941. My grandmother, Tzipora Sludgever, she survived the typhus epidemic in Transnistria, but died shortly before liberation after losing nearly 100 pounds. My father's 2- and 3-year-old daughters, Leah and Yenta, who were carried into an Auschwitz gas chamber by their mother, Esther Sledzik, in August of 1942. The gas chamber also claimed my father's parents, Yosek and Tamara Oxenhandler, and 2 of his sisters, Yentla and Miriam. Although there's no way to confirm any of this, I mention their names tonight to honor their memories. As first-generation survivors dwindle in numbers, it's important that the next generations remind the world what evil men are capable of. It's important to remember both those that survived and perished. In particular, we need to remember those who have no one who survived to tell their stories. They must never be forgotten. Last night, I attended the community Yom HaShoah ceremony in Earlsvale Park. On vigil around the perimeter of the park were Toronto police officers because it's not safe for Jews to hold public events. There's still so much hate and evil in this world. Just look what's going on in Eastern Europe. The Toronto Police Services reported that in 2021, Jews were the most targeted group subject to hate crimes. That is why Holocaust education remains a priority in our community. Not only must we never forget, but we must ensure that the rest of the world is reminded.
On page 10, we rise for the partisan song.
Sollten ihn Molast und geht's dem letzten Weg. Kosche Himmeln bleien verstellen Tag. Blumen wird noch unter eisgebänkte Schau. Svete Maikon und der trat mir seinen Dorf. und Mieten weint. Nur häufig zusammen wird die und die Kajor. Wer Parol so geht das Lied von so zu Tor. Nur häufig zusammen wird die Sonne in dem Kajor. Wer Parol so geht das Lied von Tor zu Tor. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Sie ist nicht kein Lied vor nach Segel erste frei. Das hat auf Holz zwischen Wand gewand. Das Lied gesungen mit ne Garnis in der Hand. Das hat auf Holz zwischen Wand gewand. Das Lied gesungen mit ne Garnis in der Hand. Himmel, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Oh, Himmel, bleien verstellen Tag. Kommen wir noch von der weißgebänkte Schau. Es wird der Pocken und der Trocknelten da. Kommen wir noch von der weißgebänkte Schau. Es wird der Pocken und der Trocknelten da.
Please be seated. On page 11, we read together, "In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. O God of Israel, we remember the countless numbers of our people who have suffered unspeakable agonies and death. Some were silent sufferers, some rebelled, all were murdered. Some are still remembered by friends and loved ones. Others have vanished with no earthly remembrance. We plead that you will remember all of them, that you will hold them in your heart, that they will find their peace with you. God of our fathers and mothers, our eyes are now witnesses for the suffering of Israel. Our hearts have been torn as we mourn for our people. We will not forget one single thing, not forget to the last generation, lest we ignore threats to our people and all human degradation, or we've learned nothing, nothing at all. Please rise.
אל רחמים שוכן במרומים המסה מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפיך שכינה עם קרושים וטורים כזוהר כמזהירים נשמותינו ואחיותינו שנהרגו ושנשחטו ושנסרגו בגטאות ובמחנות השמדה בעבור שאנו נודרים לקיים את זכרם לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים בעל רחמים יסירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור ויצרור החיים נשמתם אדוני הוא נחלתם ינוח בשלום משכבם ונאמר Amen.
Exalted, compassionate God, Grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the souls of all our brethren, men, women, and children of the house of Israel, who were slaughtered and burned in the ghettos and concentration camps. May their memory endure, inspiring faith and loyalty in our lives. May their souls thus be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. May they rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Please be seated. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me to lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside the still waters. You restore my soul. You guide me in straight paths for your name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Eternal forever. Amen. Please rise. Temple Heart Zion's Shoah scroll, which is itself a Shoah survivor that we dedicated to the memory of those Jews from Michle, Czech Republic. We don't know exactly what this Torah scroll went through, But more important than the survival of the scroll is the survival of its words and the survival of the people who continue to study it and live by it and try to make this world better through it. With this, we recite the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divara chirute v'amlich malchute, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon, uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha briachu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, huya asei shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. So long as still within the inmost heart a Jewish spirit sings, so long as the eye looks eastward, gazing toward Zion, our hope is not lost. That hope of 2 millennia to be a free people in our land, the land of Zion and Jerusalem. Together, standing between 2 worlds, where the past joins the present, it is impossible not to feel dislocated, unmoored from the familiar ties of our daily lives. In the intimate silence of this moment, the desire to seek and to give comfort is an expression of our common connection. Once memory has been unearthed, it passes into us and informs our hearts. Sorrow accompanies regret. Disbelief and incomprehension anchor themselves to knowledge. And through darkness, we discover illumination. I want to thank everyone who participated this evening, our colleagues, Reverend Deborah Hart, Reverend John Torrance, Hazanit Tara Abrams, all the B'nai Mitzvah class. We're so grateful. Willie and Corey and everyone who helped to put this evening together. We are grateful for all of you who came, for all of you who are streaming with us, and remembering the duty to remember. Hamakom yenachem etchem betoch she'ar avelei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God console us among all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. Amen. Amen.
Amen.